Well,
Yeah, I
good
just
morning,
wanted to
everyone.
Good
Again,
morning.
good
Morning.
morning.
Shabbat
Morning,
shalom.
Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi, and
Shabbat
Hi,
shalom.
Rabbi.
there's David
Shalom.
and Mary and Donna. Okay, so Michael, let me uh, before I read the opening prayer, David, would you care to read your latest missal?
Yes, I would do that. And it's one that I've read for you many, many times. But last week, as some of you know, I was in Flagstaff
Hmm.
to help celebrate the 95th anniversary of the discovery of Pluto. And I had to read Wendy's very favorite poem. And I'm going to read that right now. And it is from Ralph Hodgson's poem, The Song of Honor, published in 1917. I stood and stared. The sky was lit. The sky was stars all over it. I stood. I knew not why. Without a wish, without a will, I stood upon that silent hill and stared into the sky until my eyes were blind with stars. And still I stared into the sky. Thanks, Marty, and back to you.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. I just want to make a little comment about that. I was at a Boy Scout camp and I was getting my astronomy badge. Okay. And I'm in, and it's a beautiful night. It's no clouds in the sky. And you look up, and because the night there was no moon and there were no street lamps or anything like that. And the stars were enough light was on from the stars that you could see the path to walk on. We usually do not realize the intensity because there are very few places now that have what the astronomers call dark skies. But it is an amazing phenomenon that you can see in starlight, and you can imagine our ancestors doing these things, going about their business in starlight and then the use of candles, which don't give out that much light, but people read by candlelight for centuries.
Well, thank you, Marty. I really appreciate you adding that insight. And
Yeah,
for me, especially in the last couple of years, going outside and looking up at the stars, even before I open the telescope, it's like taking a huge tranquilizer pill with no side effects. And it's just
that's
wonderful.
that's true. Yeah, very good point. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, Marty, I just want to pick up on what you were just saying about that they certainly used to read or climb stairs or whatever, or cook or by candlelight, and it's one of the reasons why the prayers and the readings that we have for Hanukkah tell us that the Hanukkah candles cannot be used for any of those
Right.
purposes,
right.
which obviously leads us to believe that they did use them for. But on Hanukkah, we're not allowed to, just to look at them to be reminders of the miracle.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they would be competing for attention.
Yeah,
Oh, the candle
yeah,
went out over there. I don't want it to go out or
or
something.
made more
Yeah,
ordinary, made more mundane, and you don't want that.
sure, sure. That is fascinating. So one day we would have to have a session on light and how extraneous light that prevents us from seeing a lot of things.
And I would love to come to such a session. Marty, thank you. And Rabbi, thank you.
Anyway,
Hey,
just for
Marty.
everyone, yes,
Hi. From just
yes,
real
Donna.
quickly. Hi. Yes. Good morning. And So last time we met, we were talking about what a prophet is. And so that kind of rang a bell with me. So I looked through my notes, and in Deuteronomy 18, verse 15 through 21, it states, if the prophet speaks in the name of the Lord and the oracle does not come true, that oracle was not spoken by the Lord. So that kind of ties it up for me as far as what a prophet is. And then it also goes on, a prophet is someone who tells the truth. So who knows what that means? But
History bears it out.
yeah. Anyway, I wanted to share that. So
Oh, so then you can say, "Oh, yeah, this guy or this lady was a prophet or prophetess." Yeah, because they could see the future, and they were correct.
but if it came true,
Yes,
then it was coming
right,
from the Lord.
right.
So anyway,
Very good.
Is there
Very
a
good.
time
Thank you.
limit on that?
Well, oh yes, yes.
Is there a
My
time
pictures
limit on
changed
that?
around.
Like, yeah, I understand what Dawn is saying, but suppose you don't live long enough to see it come true.
That's true.
You don't
okay.
live long enough.
We're going to touch on something about that very thing. You say it again when we get to it today. Okay?
Okay, okay.
Okay. Yes, Michael, and then Rabbi
Yes,
Mary.
it is also said, as far as light goes, um, darkness is the absence of light.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's a very interesting. That is another subject for a science class. Okay? Because of how that develops and like that. But you are correct, and poetically, it has been mentioned that way. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Shabbat Shalom. I have a question to Rabbi Norm, and let's do it quickly because it's in Hebrew, and I apologize to the rest of you. It just occurred to me that the word Navi, prophet, comes from the word bo, which means
Lahavi,
come.
to bring.
To bring or to come, bo Eli. That's never thought about it. Well, thank you for letting me think about it. Now, regarding light and dark, I'm just listening to a superb podcast, but it's in Hebrew, and I'm so sorry that people cannot listen to it because it's just amazing. But in Bereshit, in Genesis, God creates both. It's
Yes,
not that one appears because
yes,
the other is not there, but the creation of both. And the same is with good and evil.
yes.
Both of them were created. It's not that when no one is good, then there is evil. So anyway, sorry.
Okay.
Lola
Thank you.
Inyan.
Thank you for that insight. Well, we are going to be starting with let's see, where are
Artie,
we?
don't forget the blessing. Don't forget the bracha.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
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 We are going to be starting, I guess, Numbers 25 and verse 1. Okay. And for those of you who have plowed, it's page 1193. So it starts, so if somebody would read the opening, verses 1 through 5.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, David.
Okay, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did eat and bow down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto the Baal of Peor. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them up unto the Lord in face of the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, slay ye every one his men that have joined themselves unto the Baal of Peor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Some of you may have noticed in a different interpretation. Some say that that instead of hanging, it was impaled.
Right.
Okay, and so I have to then ask the rabbis, because they're much more familiar with the Hebrew words for that are being used. What is the actual word? How does it get translated?
Which word exactly?
Which,
For the
what's
publicly,
the verse? What's the verse
it is
specific?
verse 4. Take all the ringleaders and have them publicly. I have impaled, and others say hanged. So what does the Hebrew say?
The huka'otam, right?
I don't know the meaning of the word oka. I
No,
can
yeah,
look it up.
it's an obscure text. I would defer to the I would defer to the scholars. Oh, here, wait a minute. Impaling is a rare punishment carried out also on the sons of Saul by the Gibeonites. So yeah, it says the punishment for idolatry typically was death by stoning, and then
Right.
the body was hung for public display.
That's what I have here too.
Right.
And it's according to Rashi. That's right.
Uh-huh. I'm looking to see what what this holds. Hang them up.
Well, the
This
rabbi
is
is looking at,
hang them up unto the Lord is one of the other translations.
right.
Right.
So I also have another, and that is also in Plough. In the New English Bible, it interprets it as hurl them down to their death. But I can understand why the translation of impaling because of what's to come. Okay, we'll be reading that shortly.
Yeah.
But even though Rabbi, I have to ask you to look for that word in Hebrew to see if it comes up again in the story. Okay.
I'm looking at the dictionary in Evan Shoshan, and
Oh, yes.
one of the translations for Yaakov, which is the shoresh, which is the root, says to kill by hanging.
Right. Okay.
So
So
as you were saying, Rabbi, by stoning, here it seems that that word talks about hanging, which makes sense in front of the sun, just
Right. Yeah. It's
outdoors to the.
not hanging by a noose as the manner of death.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The punishment that was identified earlier for idolatry is they were stoned to death, then the
Right.
bodies were hung, but not hung as the manner of execution.
Well,
So
in
the
here it sounds,
display, I guess, would be.
yeah, I don't know. It says emit al yedei tliya, so it's killed by hanging. I don't know. It's a new word for me,
Right,
and
yeah,
I
it's
just
a
don't know.
rare, it's
That's
a
right.
rare, but Marty, you're right, as we'll get back to it and see if it's the same verb.
I think it's important because of, the discussions that will come out of it, out of this. And I've read some other things about well, I'll bring it up later. I'll bring it up later. Any other comments that anyone else wants to make about these first 5 verses?
When we see once again the sin of going after gods that's not our God.
Right.
It seems like it's even, well, this is in groups, so it's really a very, very powerful statement in the Torah. That's something, and that's why we exterminate anyone that is in Canaan, so we are not going to be attracted to follow their gods. So this is such an important piece that it sounds like even worse than murder. I don't know, but it's a very, very powerful thing. Do not go after other gods.
Right. And there are commentaries also that part of the sexual act, or that it deals in this community, there was a sexual act associated with worshiping to the gods that that were worshipped by the uh, Baal Peorites. I just coined it.
Peor, Baal
Yeah,
Peor.
yeah. And so it's an important it's being dealt with very severely, it's I thought it was very interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mary.
And
Marty?
you're right, because if you think about it, having sex with the foreigners, with other people, what it does is it creates a new generation that it's not pure Israel. So
Mhm.
there is a problem with that kind of reality that might happen. It's not just going and whoring, but maybe the second step that it can cause.
Sure, sure. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, uh, we kind of pass over it, that the ones who were to implement the capital punishment were judges. Shoftei Ha'am, the judge. So this was seen as a as a punishment from the law, from the mishpatim. That I was talking about this last night at services, but from the mishpatim, from the rules, not necessarily from the mitzvot, the
Right.
commandments, but this is something that affected the civil society, and hence it were the judges
Hmm.
for their jurisdictional grouping. They were the ones to implement this, rather than saying, okay, the leaders of each tribe, find out you're responsible for those men in your tribe. This is a judicial act.
Right. And the by the way, Rabbi, in Plout, he also mentions that uh, in the face of, when they're in the face of the sun, it implies this was going to be done publicly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So that
that's another aspect. So, uh, and if you think about punishments that have existed before, uh, those of you who were enthralled by all of the stories of the Old West, okay, they had public hangings. It's a big deterrent because when you see these events, they're very grotesque, and that's a mild way of putting it. And so when people see that, it's a big deterrent to bad behavior. That's all. That's what it does.
Well, it's
Yeah.
deterrence, and it's also identification.
Yeah.
You know, it's also that, again, from the judicial point of view, it's don't think that any of you are above the law.
Right.
Okay, that even though so that everyone identifies, oh, wow, Joe did that,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm very disappointed in Joe,
Yeah.
and he got what he deserved.
Sure. So that's a good point too. So there's a lot, as we unpack this, we suddenly see some other aspects to it uh, that we don't normally get when we read it too fast. Any other comments? Yes, Michael.
Uh, as far as this deterrence with punishment, if I can bring it in today's society, uh, many people believe that the death penalty in our country is a deterrence. It was not meant. It was not meant or designed to be a deterrence, but punishment. And
Correct.
I remember arguing that point with Jerry Bellinger, who uh, was a law professor, and he had mentioned it. And I love Jerry very much. We miss him, Jerry Bellinger. He's very much missed.
They're
Yes.
doing okay. They're doing okay in Columbus, incidentally. I spoke to them recently.
And so uh, I had this one, and this is when we had the Torah class at the temple, way before COVID. And so he mentioned it that, well, it's not working as a deterrent, and I argued the point with him in a nice way, if I may say, that it was never meant as a deterrent. If it deters somebody, that's a good thing. If it works as a deterrent in a particular case, that's certainly a good thing, but it was not meant or designed it that way. But punishment.
Okay.
Michael, and I'm not sure, Norm is going to help me out if it's Pirkei Avot on Torah. I think it's in the Torah. There is a phrase in Hebrew called Leman Ir'u Ve'irau. It's interesting, it's the same root, Ir'u Ve'irau. It's for they'll be fearful, that will see and be fearful. So it's interesting that what you say, maybe in the Torah they did think that it's a return, a deterrent.
Sure. And that's interesting. Thank you for that. So it goes both ways, but I think that it's a very interesting commentary. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rabbi Mary. Any other comments?
Yes,
Yes,
Marty, may I?
please.
In that section, those 5 lines, the the reader is led to understand that virtually all the people, you know, the people were the ones that were following the Midianites and their God. And then, as Rabbi Norm clarified for me, that it was the judicial, and
Mhm.
in my Tanakh, the officials who were charged with slaying them. But there must have been those, and many of those among the people who did not subscribe to the Baal Peor God, because one would expect that those that were slain weren't slain willingly, right? That they had to be caught, dragged, you see what I'm saying? So it's just an interesting use of terms, like the people. I always get a kick out of that when somebody uh, would say, well, all these people or everybody. And it's like, well, who are you talking about specifically? Right. And in this case, we're led to believe that the vast majority of the Israelites were following that. And I don't see how it was possible for the officials, because they didn't number, I assume, in the numbers equal to the rest of the minions, the people. And so there had to be some. But Rabbi Norm's got something to share. Go ahead.
Please, Rabbi.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and again, we just kind of skipped over it. It didn't leap out at us. Is that Moses? Moses says to the officials, gather up all the ringleaders. Okay, the Roshei Ha'am. I forget what the is it. Yeah, Roshei Ha'am. The leaders of the people, not the leaders of the tribe. The leaders, and those are the ones who are being hung for display,
Right.
or being, however we see the capital punishment. Now, whether that actually happened or not, we have yet to determine as we continue with the story. There are many more than the ringleaders who ultimately suffer punishment. Okay,
Right.
so we need to keep that in mind
Yes,
when it does
they
say
will.
that the people were, participated in this transgression.
Okay. And that'll open up some good
Right.
discussion too when we get to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, Marianne.
Excuse me, picking up what Rabbi just said, I'm reading the same thing. It says, bring leaders, the people who are responsible for bringing this transgression, sin, evil, whatever you want to call it, on everybody else, that through coercion or lies or whatever they were doing, they were manipulating the general population to see it their way. And they say, if you get rid of the troublemakers, you'll have the trouble.
Very good. So, there are some interesting side discussions here. If you have any belief system and you're living in another land, okay, what can befall you if you pick up habits that other people may have? For example, you're traveling along and you don't want to, you've never had alcohol. Your life is okay, but to be a member of a group, you've got to drink, such as a fraternity. Okay? What do you do? To get along with the group, you say, okay, I've got to participate. What'll they think of me? Well, they will make fun of me. But is it the right thing to do?
Well,
The same thing can be said about smoking. Yes, Michael. Yeah.
well, I'm under certain medication, and my doctor told me I must not take any drinks.
Mm-hmm.
You offer some excuse if
Right.
it's you don't want to lie, but you want to protect yourself, and you don't want to bow down to pressure, so you design something that that
You've,
makes some sort of sense.
okay. Yeah, I think that it's that's another way of doing it. But there are other things in society. Suppose you befriend someone, you're having a great time, and they say to you, "Oh, yeah, why don't we go out and let's steal from the store? Everyone else is doing it. Look at the TV.
Well,
Why don't we do it? No, there's no punishment for it.
then it goes to a sense of morality.
Sure, this is a moral question that we're discussing here.
On peer pressure.
That's right. Peer pressure can make you do things that you normally would not want to do.
Hmm.
Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
Well, there was a television show on the other day that we were watching that was based on, as some of you may remember from undergraduate school or whatever, the Milgram experiment, the Stanley Milgram experiment at Yale, that ultimately basically said that people put their sense of morality second when
That's
an
right.
authority figure
Yes,
tells them that it's okay to do X, Y, or Z.
right.
So there's not only your own personal sense of morality, but the given that an authority figure, whether it's a parent,
Yeah,
whether it's a
anyone in
clergy
charge.
person, professor, a president, who whatever, as opposed to the peer pressure of friends.
Yes.
Right.
And that can be so it there's so many different ways. Sometimes it could be money that you value it above other things. Sometimes it can be sex, which is what they're talking about here. Okay, but there are other things that anybody can come up with other examples. Yes, Michael.
As a side issue, uh, for example, if you attend law school, if you're a young person attending law school, you are taught to think from a legal position,
Hmm.
not from a moral position per se,
Hmm.
but a
No.
legal position. At the end of the class, at the end of your school, they have a class on uh, ethics. You take
Hmm.
an ethics to try to clear that up. This ethics class, but this business of thinking from a from a legal position rather than a moral, for me, is somewhat problem for my just problematic the way the whole thing goes.
Yeah, it is but it's like a warning what can happen if. And you want to, so again, when we allow habits to take over, when we allow other people to dictate to us the way to think, if we do other things, if it doesn't sound just right, we don't have to, you have to go back and think about it, see how it fits in with the morality and the values that you've been taught, and then you make a decision that's better for yourself. Now, someone else may think otherwise, but at least we can think for ourselves and and then make a decision that way. So it becomes very, very important to in the way we conduct our lives in general. I know the rabbis can they use this passage probably to talk about morality. Yes,
Well,
yes,
yes, we
Rabbi
do. And while
Ron.
while you were talking, I was thinking back that I don't know about the U.S. military, but I do know that the Israeli military uses this story to talk about what they call Tarat HaNeshek, is the purity of arms. Of just because you have conquered another people does not mean that you can take advantage of,
Right.
in this case, of the women, or or whatever. But they refer to this as how they build their standard of ethics for military behavior.
Very interesting. I did not know that. That's cool. Yes, Mike.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Donna, did you have your hand up or no? No. Okay. Yes, Michael, and then
Uh, you
we
know,
can move
this
on.
this this takes me back just recently to where was the morality when we saw all of these uh, um, uh, um, uh, um, during the time of the university, all of these things that were happening. Where was the morality of all of these people that was protesting against Israel, as if 10/7/23 never happened, or uh, so what? So it happened. So big deal. It's still, a one-sided protesting for all the Palestinians, and the Jews didn't count. So where is that morality? So what you're saying, you could see it in today's society, unfortunately.
Yes, because there were some Jewish students as well in those protests. So it becomes they're very fine lines. Morality is very difficult. And it's your own personal feeling about things. Ethics would be attributed more to group behavior. If you think about it, and that's how I separate the two. Because one is a legal way, there's a legal way, there is a religious way, there is a cultural way of how you deal with things. It varies from what a society believes is it is totally different from other societies. We should not say that our thinking is universal. Certain aspects are, but not the entire package. And so we have to realize that if we want to think in terms of what we consider right and wrong, we have to do it by showing people that what we consider right and wrong is a better way than others. Notice I said show. I didn't say and try to convince others with words. You have to show that it's beneficial. If you set the example, they will want to know more about what you said. And that's one of the things with the prophets. Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I think I want to go back a little bit.
Sure.
There are actually two sins here in this, just
Mhm.
in these 5 verses. Okay. Yes, there's the story that we're focusing on of those who participated in prohibited sexual relations, and that, um, or the immoral acts of taking advantage
Yes.
of women prisoners, however we want to understand that. But the other was the number of people who participated in idolatry and idol worship.
Yes.
Okay, so they what the I think I don't know, somebody said something about what, I wonder what the rabbis have said about all of this. One of the things that they do is they separate out those two, let's call them sins, those two acts of transgression. And because there's more attention being paid to the sexual immorality story, they then define in the halakha, in the law, that acts of sexual immorality are more egregious even than idolatry.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
That's
That
what
is,
But then
happened to
they get into the
David.
whole thing of,
Yeah.
of identify, which is the worst kind of sin and whatever. But sexual immorality, or amorality, however we want to say it in English, is ranked as a higher sin even than avodah zarah, than idol worship.
yeah,
Hmm.
because if there are different ramifications of that. I'm not going to take up all the time, but I
No,
can see that how you're destroying a life, or potential life. This comes up from the religious side of things.
right,
I can see it if you're forcing yourself on someone, you're stealing their soul. You're stealing their family's soul. I mean, the repercussions
right.
I can understand what they're,
Yeah.
they're getting
In
at.
the context of
Yeah,
developing what we call the Kehillah Kedoshah, the sacred community, as they develop their patterns, they learn this is supposed to teach them a particular lesson.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, Kent. And then we'll go on because there's so
Yes.
much more to go
Well,
over.
what Rabbi Norm just shared, that kind of rabbinic kind of interpretation of this, and the priority of the sexual not inhibitions but prohibitions, and then the worship of a different God. What's interesting in that section is that both are spoken of, but the Lord has said to Moses, take the ringleaders, the men, and then Moses instructs his officials, slay those of his men attached to this. Now, so one would assume, well, there's a couple of assumptions here. One is that this kind of in, endemic historical context of a male gender prominence or predominance throughout Torah to an extent is one thing, but the other thing is that those were the people that were assumed were taking sexual improprieties, if you will. Just an observation on there. And one last thing is that in my Tanakh, line 5, it
Hmm.
begins with the word so Moses. In other
Right.
words, now a synonymous term might be hence. Um, and it just struck me that going back to the Torah portion about Moses striking the rock and to get water, and he didn't invoke God's name as the one who did it. It was him. It seems almost like he did it again. Now there's no repercussion. It didn't seem like, and the reason I say that is that in line 4, it was to take the ringleaders.
Hmm.
In line 5 is to take all men that engaged in it, not just the ringleaders.
It's an interesting observation.
Just it is just an observation. So, but thank you. I'm done.
No, but I find it interesting. Thank you, Kent. Well, why don't we read on and see what happens by reading verses 6. Just a second. Got it all.
9 till 9.
To the end of
parasha.
9.
Yeah.
To the end
I'll
of
do
9.
that if you like, Marty.
Thank you, Kent.
This
Sure.
is a disgusting part, Ken. Make sure.
Hey. Okay. All right. You got it, Rabbi Mary. All right. Here we go. Just then, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions. And in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting, When Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000.
So that answers your question. Not everybody was involved, right? And those that were partaking were probably the first to go in that plague. Now, comments. I mean, just as I'll get the thinking started, maybe. Just as Moses tells what the Israelite officials to do, then one of the Israelites brings a Midianite woman, and in vision, the sight of everyone, has goes into the tent of meeting. Okay. And they're going to have some carnal relations.
No. The couple doesn't go into the tent of meeting. No, there's no indication that they go
Oh,
into.
they're not at the temple. That's right.
They go
It's
into
they're
his tent.
the
or-
others are weeping. Right. Okay.
The
So,
people,
thank you,
the
Rabbi.
people are standing by the tent of meeting. They're all in mourning because they're the leadership and whatever have all been killed.
Okay. So what do you make of this? I mean, how would you interpret this, what Phineas is doing here?
Where is the plague? Here
Well,
is
you can ask
the
that
plague
too.
stopped.
You can ask that too, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay? Because there are different ways you can interpret that. So we'll come to when we get
Save
to
that.
point.
Yes. Because I thought I just read too fast this section and missed it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So what about the act? Let's first discuss that. What about this act? What's going on here?
I don't know why um, uh, Phineas also speared
Pinchas.
the woman.
Why
I'll just
what?
leave it at that. I'm sorry?
Why Pinchas what?
Speared the woman, killed the woman.
Both of
Okay.
them.
Okay. In addition to that,
Oh, you
but
mean two at one time?
Right.
Because they were copulating.
Seems like.
that's what it implies.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh. Okay.
So there are different interpretations as to where they were stabbed. Some say in the belly or in the nether regions.
Oh,
Okay. And so it made me do some thinking, which I'll do after we cover this. But yes, first Donna and then Marianne.
yes. I find it interesting that they say the belly. And
Mm-hmm.
what came to mind with me is with a woman, that's part of her reproduction part of not having a child. It's where you bear a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that interesting. And then I guess it was lined up with his belly too, because they were together.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm just looking at why they specified that. There it could have been in the back. The spear went into the back. But this says the belly. So,
It is, so that's all we can say. I don't know. Do you have any ideas yourself?
well, other than what I just brought up, there has to be some kind of meaning there, and I don't know what the translation then would be, belly into Hebrew.
Belly,
It could have been, oh,
stomach, yeah,
okay,
teiva, yeah.
okay. Or through the heart. I mean, they just said the belly. So I don't know.
So, okay. Okay, before we start discussing that, let's hear Marianne and see what she wanted to bring up, and then we'll see if they overlap or not.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to bring up exactly what Donna said. If the body is a temple, and if the Spirit of God resides in part in each person's body, each person's temple, and like Donna just said, reproduction, yeah, and who knows what they knew then, but it's in the belly that they're eliminating the sexual sin and the ability to carry it on, either in themselves or in other generations. That they're saying, the way I'm saying is they're saying that, and also back then, you don't know what kind of STDs they had or if they had HIV, but there's also a lot of health issues involved in this. So there's a physical issue, a spiritual issue, and a health issue
You can say
that
that.
we're all
Yeah.
addressing. And like Donna said, the womb, that they're going to put an end to it. If there's no reproduction, then there can be no reproduction of evil or sin.
That's a good one. Anyone else? Okay. My mom used to say to
Marty,
me,
there
oh,
there
yeah,
is a little play on words in the Hebrew.
okay.
I don't know whether that means that there's a mistranslation or just a play on words. But the Hebrew word for it's like the bridal chamber, the part of the tent
Hmm.
that they went to, and then also the
Tuban,
part of the body of where the spear entered them. The two words are similar. They're
Yeah.
not
Oh,
necessarily from the same root, so it could just be that it was a play on words, or whatever. But just pointing it out.
okay. That's good. That's important. That could be important. Yeah. Now I forgot what I was. Oh, yeah. I was
Sorry.
going to say there was my mom used to say, dealing with things that you want to do, but can also be done in it, can lead to doing wrong things or to um, gluttony, things like that. She would use a phrase and mention it quite often with lots of these examples. Uh, uh, think with your brain, not your belly. Think about that for a second. Okay. And that she may have picked it up from this passage. I don't know, but the point being that maybe when we are like we were mentioning with various habits, your belly may want you to do a whole bunch of things, but you know deep down inside if you use your head, it's the wrong thing to do. That was the interpretation I got back then and made sense to me. So there are a lot of things I never did. Okay. but there were tons of pressures, tons of pressures, that could befall one. And so, but I just find it interesting to see, see something here to that effect. Any comments? Not just what I
unless
said,
of
but
course you were
about the
very, very,
story.
very, unless of course you were very, 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 very hungry.
Yes, or you had abstained from food for a long period of
Mhm.
time, or drink, or
Well,
whatever. It,
yeah.
it can make you do some crazy things.
Well, and then, again, and this leads us into a different interpretation of what's going on here, but the children of Israel hung out in the middle of the wilderness and hunger and
Sure,
thirsty and whatever. And Moses has been on the top of the mountain and they're anxious and depressed and whatever. And so they are easily led to idolatry.
sure.
But the punishment for the children, I'll give the clue. The punishment for the children of Israel after the golden calf, numerically, quantitatively, the punishment is less than in this case, which is defined, defined by the transgression of sexual prohibition. So again, that's in that hierarchy.
Sure.
In
Very
Ellen
interesting.
Shoshan, in the dictionary, interesting enough, the word kuba, which
Kuf,
anyone,
kuf, kuf
this
bet,
person
bet
went
hey.
to the
Right.
kuba, it means brothel. Brothel?
Brothel,
Yeah.
Brothel. Okay.
So,
house of ill repute.
so exactly. So he goes over there. So she seems to be a professional whore or something. And the word Kabbalah to Marianne and Downa is that it means the women the women parts, the sexual parts of the woman. So this is an interesting thing that I thought that it was in front of since it says in front of Moses, it was in front of or the tent of meeting. But according to translation, it seems that this guy went to the right place to find these two together, and that's when he just pierced the what's his name into both of them. But interesting that the word Kuba is explained as one of the if one of the translations is a place in which these women were working.
Oldest profession, they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's proof.
Well, if you are studying
You know what? We'd have to
Joshua,
look. Mary, do you have a concordance there, Bunny Chance?
yes, I do.
I wonder if that's this, if Kuba, if it's the same word in Megillat Esther
Ah,
of the where the women of the harem of where the women all live to train for their ability to serve the king.
the
Ah,
I wonder
concubines,
if it's the
yeah.
same Hebrew word. Okay, sorry.
Let's look.
okay,
And
well, you're looking.
the word zonah in Joshua appears as that as well,
Yes,
that there
right,
were
right.
zonim
Right.
after. Yeah. You know, in school, they used to teach the little kids that it means mezonot, once they provide food.
Yeah. Well, some of the commentators says that Zonah comes. We're in the Joshua story, but that Zonah comes from Mazon.
Yeah.
That she was an innkeeper. She provided food for the
Well,
wandering. Rather, right? Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let me check this and you can go forward and
Okay.
then I'll disturb you.
While yes, Kent, yes.
I I'd like to know if anybody has insight as to why Phineas would have killed the Midianite woman as well as the Israelite.
They were together.
Well, that's going to come up in our discussions. Okay? Good. It's a good question.
Well, I haven't read further, so maybe
And we
there's
have to understand something about who these people were. That's going to come up. Okay? We're not there yet.
Okay.
Okay.
And then it'll make sense as to why all this is being done. Yes, Rabbi.
I say this smilingly. We can't pronounce his name as Phineas. It's Pinchas. You
Pinchas.
Pinchas.
can't have a
Pinchas.
Hebrew word. A Hebrew word cannot begin with an F sound.
Okay.
It's against
Thank
against
you
the
for
grammar.
now I see it. I was
Yeah, it's
thinking the
Pinchas.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea
Yeah,
or something.
right. I
like
don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where it started becoming Phineas or
Yes.
Finian, but right.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
My
Thank you
fault.
for that.
My fault.
No, it's not anybody's fault. Right.
So, the question came up in verse 8. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Okay? You made mention of that. What plague? So, there are several possibilities. Okay, if the first thing that comes to mind when we mention the word plague is some disease. Okay, and there are a lot of sexual diseases, sexually transmitted diseases that can be a plague. Okay, I mean, we've been through HIV in more recent times. Before that, it was gonorrhea, syphilis, okay, and they didn't know about parvovirus, not HPV, human papillomavirus. They didn't know about that. They didn't. So, but there are lots of different diseases that can be transmitted. Okay, so we could think of it that way. And okay, they were dying from a plague. Some people, I forgot the name of the person. They said it was the bubonic plague. It may have been the bubonic plague, a rat infested area, and they got bubonic plague. Well, in the middle of the desert, hey, you go out in the desert here in the Southwest, you can get bubonic plague. Okay. It gets passed around with all those little varmints running around in the desert. And if you just happen to sleep in the wrong area and you inhale some of the dung and like that, yeah, you're going to get it, or urine, or that's going to happen. So it's still with us to this day, but limited, fortunately. But this is something. Could it be that, or is it something else?
I'm in front of what we call the 10 plagues that the Egyptians got. And we use the word plagues to define that, but I don't see that word coming up as an expression of what happened there. I'll keep reading, but I'm not sure that that's. And the word kuba, Rabbi Norm, it appears according to the Concordancia only in this place.
Okay, there's a
In
different word than
Bamidbar.
in.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
I thought it was like Chadar Hanashim or something like that, but
Well, maybe there are many synonyms.
right, yeah, okay.
so Rabbi, you were going to add something, yes.
Yeah, I just get you saying there, what other possible interpretations. The classic, I don't remember if it's Rashi or not, but the classic is that where did this plague come from? Is that the euphemism that goes back to verse 4 is God's wrath. That's where the plague was coming from. But that raises the question because it says that or the implication is that God's wrath had returned from being upon the people earlier. Now, so is this a continuation of the same plague after the golden calf, or is it two different plagues? You know, whatever things like that. But that's the classical. How come we haven't heard about this plague before? Yes, we did. It just was called the Charon Adonai, the wrath
Yeah.
of God.
Okay. Which, well, that becomes important because it's their behavior. The bad behavior. The word plague usually follows a disastrous event. So if we rethink plague, maybe bad intentions, doing evil acts, they can become a scourge, a plague. And maybe that's what it's referring to. That by it wasn't obviously these two people who are the story is going to tell us who they were when we'll understand it. I'll just say they were very important people. And as a result, they were defying everything. So they were still around. So they are going to be killed. So the plague itself may have been just bad behavior. That's all. I don't know. Because it just can't, the word is used out of, just it didn't say in the past God creates a plague and everything. This one isn't. So what is the word referring to? And the only thing that it seems to me, it's referring to this evil act, disregard for the commandments against idolatry. It's disregarding the if you think about it, it's disregarding quite a few of the commandments. And so it's not just two things, it's a lot more. And maybe that was a plague, that this was sin with a capital S. Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, Rabbi.
If I may, Doctor.
Uh-oh.
All right. I mean, it's an interesting exegesis. It's an interesting interpretation that the Magifa was the behavior, was the ongoing and that played upon each other. But the Hebrew doesn't necessarily lead to that.
Right.
Okay, but it is an interesting way of interpreting it. So all power to you.
Okay.
If I may,
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Okay. Yes, Michael, please.
okay. If I can step back just for a moment, Marty, if I may, about the stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
Am I understanding this correctly that Israelite and the woman they were engaged in intercourse?
Thanks.
Yes.
Intercourse. Well, it's likely if they were engaged in intercourse, the stabbing would have been from the back because they would have been more or less belly to belly. So it had to be, the stabbing had to come from the back. And this, probably the central part would be the easiest way to get that done. And that would be more or less the back, from the back. So I'm not, there's something that I'm probably missing here.
Well,
Maybe it was done with a
one
lot of,
was on the back. That's why it can be from the back. At least one of the persons could have been from the back, as you say, and the other was lying on the back.
Yeah, so they weren't, they weren't stabbed individually, they were stabbed together.
Yes, yes,
correct,
like
which
Sicily.
tells
They're
you
both,
Excuse me.
they're
something.
stabbed
Yeah.
together, right?
It tells you
Yes.
something about the strength, the force that had to be used to to kill
Oh.
two with one blow.
That tells you something about the anger.
Yes. Okay, which is going to come up now. That leads us into the next portion here.
Okay, Marty, one
Yes.
more thing. In Hebrew, during the 10, what in English we call the 10 plagues of Egypt.
Yes.
In Hebrew, it's called moftim, which is miracles or
Signs even, yes.
yeah.
Signs and
Displays.
okay.
Right. So that's an interesting thing that we, in another language, translated as plague.
Yes. Very
The
interesting.
signs of God.
Very good. Very good. Well, who would like to read verses 10 through the end of 13? Now remember the violence of the act. Okay. Verses 10 through the end of 13.
I would be happy to read that.
Okay, thank you, David.
And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, hath turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, in that he was very jealous for my sake among them, so that I consume not the children of Israel in my jealousy. Wherefore say, behold, I give unto him my covenant of peace, and it shall be unto him and to his seed after him the covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was jealous for his God, and made atonement for the children of Israel. Now for the name of
Okay, that's
man.
it, David. That's it. That's it, because we've got a lot of talking here.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So any comments about what David just read? You know, here's a fellow who's killed two people, and hey, wait a minute, God is interpreting this differently. By the way, our legal system has a term for this, okay, and handles this in a totally different way. Crimes of passion. Okay, so this story has other, also has an implication on the legal system. Any comments?
Well, in here, what it says is that Pinchas had the zealot, what's the noun of
A
zealot?
zealot, yes,
Of like God,
yes,
and he did it for God to remove the zealoty of God. So it's the word zealot comes 3 times here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting sentence.
The other thing that suppose, it's interesting that the other leaders, like Moses and how would is silent here. It doesn't say that Moses did this. So this is one question. Where is Moses in this? Is this like in Jacob? When we read about Jacob and there's a story about Dinah and what happened. What does Jacob do when he hears about this? He's silent. So maybe, I mean, this is another midrash, Rabbi. I'm sorry, another drosh. But maybe it's because he's silent. He doesn't know. Maybe he's mulling. How do I respond to this when Dina is defiled by oh golly, I forgot the name. I forget the name of
Shem.
Shechem. Oh, isn't it interesting that we're near Shechem at this time too? So maybe we're supposed to think of that story. I don't know. Yes, Rabbi.
Well, I think another possible image is that Moses, like Aaron, when his 2 sons are killed, or
Right.
he's just in shock.
That's right.
Disbelief. What just happened?
Mhm.
OMG. However he might have said that or thought that. And because it leads into the same dilemma that
Mhm.
the rabbis or Torah study classes throughout the generations have experienced with this story. Okay, is zealotry a positive, or is this a positive or negative? It may be an attribute of the divine, but do we have the right to play God? Or
There you
you know,
go.
or you can picture Pinchas standing up and saying, "Well, I was doing what God told me to do." So it's very, very complex
Yeah.
and confusing here.
Now, if we look at Pinchas, he has what we call yiches. He
Right.
is the grandson of Aaron.
Right.
He is the
Yes.
nephew of Moshe.
Right.
Yes.
So maybe he feels that his role is such that, like a leader, that it's okay for him to do that, or it's even his duty to do that.
He's bucking for Aaron's job.
Right,
Aaron's going to retire or die soon.
right, he's
Right.
old.
So it's, these are all different ideas that we come. I love the gaps. That's the thing.
There's a fella out of Los Angeles. His name is Joel Grishaver, who does some interesting. Some of them are. It's all very novel and creative, and some of it is humorous, and some of it is very poignant. but he has let's call it a midrash. He has he calls them Sedrecenes. He has a thing where because that Pinchas and Zimri, who is
Hmm.
the who's they're actually cousins.
They are cousins. Yes,
Right,
I've
and
read that. That's
so
right.
this book of collection of little anecdotes has has the two of them responding to the events that of the end of the end of the last parsha, and and then they each react in different ways, and it adds to the pathos of the story that Pinchas has to kill his cousin like that. I'm going to take this opportunity just to point out a couple things that we don't see here,
Okay.
but when we get there in the actual Torah text, okay, to again demonstrate how confused and perplexed the tradition has always been with this story. When they write Pinchas's name here, they in the Torah, the Sofer makes the Yud in his name, that Yud that stands for
Or
God, makes
yes.
it much smaller,
Right.
right?
In the second time, the first time, it's okay. I
Right.
was going to say
Yeah,
that.
right, right,
Yes.
right, right. And then also when Pinchas, and I don't remember if we've gotten the, yes, it's um in verse 12, the breach shalom,
Hmm.
the covenant of shalom, that is Pinchas's reward from God. The vav,
Hmm.
the Hebrew letter vav
Yes.
It's
in
a
the word
good.
shalom, is also written
Right.
smaller, as if that reward or the shalom is diminished somewhat because the act was not so much a perfect act.
So very good.
So when we get there reading of the Torah, which is going to be over the summer somewhere, we'll invite everybody to come and take a look.
Okay. Because I just thought it was, I'm glad you brought it up.
He
Any
was
other, any other,
rewarded. He was rewarded by being a Kohen, by being a priest forever, because he did what he did. And
Which
he
is if which
atoned for Bnei Israel. So it wasn't punished, it was rewarded.
well, some priests might say that that's as much a punishment as it is a
Okay,
reward.
sure. Like being a
Because
rabbi, yeah?
well,
you're now living in the glass house, and everybody's
Yeah,
looking at you
yeah,
and watching every single thing that you do,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you're the one who has to do all the atoning for,
yeah.
and on and on and on. So there's again there's a
so,
Is this a punishment or a reward?
right.
Right.
so Phineas,
Pinchas.
Pinchas,
Pinchas,
Pinchas.
Pinchas. Let me do it the right way. Pinchas. If
Yeah,
he,
his name should be Pinchas Pog instead of Phineas Fogg. So in
okay,
Hebrew, Pinchas Pog. Okay.
love it. Anyway, his lineage, though, becomes somewhat important, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Sure.
Yes, yes,
I'm going to let the rabbis
yes.
expand on that because this is the real blessing. He doesn't really do anything else in the stories. It's his progeny,
Right.
way down the line. Go ahead, Rabbi Mary.
No, I
You
don't have anything to say, but the issue of lineage comes through the Tanakh. In the future, it's a big deal if you're coming from Aaron. And this guy comes from Aaron, the first high priest.
right, and this is it's Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, they just the story seems to be that those who carry that Pinchas's descendants also carry, whether it's a subtitle or I guess what we would call a family name of Sadok.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then and later in the tradition and later in the Tanakh, the Sadokites,
Right, right.
Yeah,
get special attention, right?
yeah.
And that comes up also in Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you see, there's a lot more
Okay,
to this.
right.
So that's why I wanted to comment there. But
Yeah.
now, any
Which
other?
other people, Marty, for those who didn't necessarily catch the connection,
Okay,
if you know the name from New Testament times, if you know the name of the Sadducees,
Sadducees. That's
right?
right.
Okay, you know, right.
Okay.
The Pharisees and the Sadducees are
Right.
the Sadokites.
So the way this plays out is just mind-boggling. That's all I can say. As a neophyte to all of this, I get all excited as I read about connections and see other things and like that.
You don't seem so neo-fanatic to me.
Oh yeah,
Elon.
just got to do a lot of reading. Anyway, any comments about so is this a crime? Is this a crime that's been committed or not
By whom?
by Pinchas?
No.
Why is he spared punishment? And I came across some stuff on this part too. Why is he spared, this act of zealotry, why is he spared uh punishment? You remember I mentioned the word crime of passion. Earlier, as we were at the onset, we were
Well,
talking about yes, Rabbi,
no, I was
yes.
going to say, I mean, one line of thinking of why it's not a crime is that Pinchas was doing what God told these people to
That's
do.
right.
And then there's Midrash that just like Nachshon going into the sea, that no one else was coming forward to doing
Right.
this. And again, making the connection between what we were talking about, whether that the people, the leaders, or those who were following after the Midianite women should be impaled. That here was a perfect example. I'm good. No one else is stepping forward to do it. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So it was not seen as a crime if it was fulfilling God's command.
So,
Yeah,
but
there is another point here. The woman also had yichus. The woman was
Mm,
the daughter of the head of the house of Midian. That she was like a princess. She had status
mhm.
as well. So it wasn't a punishment just to the guy. It was less than killing her as a high status woman of the Midianites.
Okay. Yes, that becomes very important. And so you have two people so maybe these are the people that have to be slain because they represented both we haven't gotten into that passage yet, but it talks of Zimri and his ancestry, and also the Midianite woman. We find out she's named Cosby or Cosby, I don't know.
Yeah, Cosby. Mhm.
And so they're both fairly important people,
Yep.
both of them. We haven't gotten there yet, but th- I did read a little commentary about this. I wanted to get back before we jump to the next section. I did read a little commentary, so I'm going to ask this here. Suppose, just for a second, when Pinchas, you know, does this act, what would have happened if he had stood by and thought about it and then slayed those two people after the act?
After their act of intercourse?
After their act, how would it be? How would you look at it? How would you look at it if he waited, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour? Yes,
I don't
Marianne,
think in
yes.
that case you can see it as a zealous act of passion, uh, that it is at that point premeditated because he thought about killing them.
So
Okay,
that would have been an
therefore
act of murder.
it would have been murder as a murder of passion or a crime of passion.
Uh, I'm just trying to,
What can I say? I worked with inmates too long.
yeah, but this is just, I wanted, oh, yes, it's Rabbi Hirsch said that. Okay, I just wanted a footnote, where that, because I thought it was very interesting. The quotation is Phineas. The author here says Phineas, but I'm going to say Pinchas acted meritoriously only because he punished the transgression immediately in a rage. And had he done it afterwards, it would have been seen as murder. Very good, Miriam. Yes, Rabbi.
Um, Something it keeps in my perspective is Pinchas's act is described, and Rabbi Miri pointed out also, is within that it's an act of, in Hebrews, kinah, of passion or zealotry,
Right.
or whatever. And that's the first, when God, in the story of the Ten Commandments, when God introduces himself,
Elkanah.
it's I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods besides me. For I am El Kana Poked Avon, because I myself, God says, I'm an impassioned God. I am a
Right.
zealous,
Right.
passionate, and da, 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 da. And I wonder if there's also the intention
Mm.
on the part of the biblical author, whether that's God, whether that's Moses, whether that's a human being, to intentionally use that same word,
Mm.
saying that Pinchas considered himself as important as God. I mean, if that's the
Mm.
same adjective, characteristic, attribute that God chose, then then we're gonna assign that to Pinchas also as part of his motivation. That,
Interesting.
if it's okay for God to do these kinds of things and we're supposed to be godlike, then it's perfectly all right for me to do this passionate, zealous act.
It's not Kal vachomer. So
And no,
You could take it a step further, and you can say, well, you told me stories about the golden calf before I was just a kid back then, and I remember although my grandfather didn't do anything, my my father was involved in slaying all these people that maybe that set up this precedence in Pinchas, because all of a sudden the Levites go out there and they start slaying people again.
right.
Now, we also see that the act of these two people is in front of Moshe, is in front of Moses.
Yes.
There is a phrase that in the Talmud, it's called later on, befarehesia, in public. So it seems like, and since it's mentioned, maybe it was different than the rest of the people that were doing these sexual behaviors. It seemed like it was what we call davka. I'm going to show you,
Right.
that I can do intermarriage. And it's a problematic thing.
Sure. So I'm going. It's basically it's an act of defiance.
Yes.
I think that would be a way of looking.
Right.
And so I just found it a little interesting the way this story turns out. So, any other comments about what we've been? Yes, Marianne. Yes.
If this woman is a prostitute, okay, let's just go with that line of thinking, and she became pregnant through this act, that child, then he wouldn't have a father. Uh, there would be no father involved. There would just what they call a sperm donor. That he would have no family because the mother was not married to the father.
No.
So therefore, that kind of just dumps the poor child in the mud.
All right,
No,
Rabbi.
not in the Torah. In the Torah, as if the father, and we know who the father is in this case, okay?
Mhm.
If the father is an Israelite, then no matter who the mother is, the child is an Israelite.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. I didn't understand it that way. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's in the Torah. The law changes later on in history, and now in our generation, it's being looked at differently again. But in the Torah, a child is Jewish if the father's Jewish. Well, not Jewish, because they didn't use the word Jewish.
Right.
The child is a Hebrew or an Israelite. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, yes, Donna.
Yeah, it sure takes some time to digest just 10, 11. But what I'm starting to see is that Pinhas, the Israelites, by displaying among them his passion for me. So I think that's interesting that this is the Israelites are seeing this. They're seeing displayed among them his passion for God, so that he did not wipe out the Israelite people in my passion. So to observe that would, if I had been there and saw or displayed among them his passion for me, Anyway, I don't know how to explain that, but I find that quite interesting. Why would that be important? And for the Israelites to see this, and just to among them his passion for me. So I guess my question would be, why is that important the way it was written, that the Israelites see this? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Okay. It makes an impact. It would make an impact on me to see, wow, this, by having passion for God, it can eliminate the wrath of God. Period.
Okay. So where are you going with this?
I guess that's just where what I just, by displaying, what would be the reason for displaying this for the Israelites? What did they get out of that by seeing, by observing this? It's more of a question.
Okay, well, in the Jewish tradition, that's why I asked you the question, why do you think it? What do you think? Because there's, something entered your mind there before you, and you're probably correct. We've seen it in multiple cases since the golden calf incident. We've seen it in all the plagues in Egypt. We've seen it be played out. The Israelites are not happy people. If you think about it, they constantly do things to wrestle with God.
Yeah, Israel. Yeah, to
They're,
wrestle.
they're always complaining. They're always erring, but they keep coming back, and they're forgiven. Maybe, yeah, go
And
ahead.
they forget.
Yes.
They forget about. They have. I don't know if it's the same people who observed Moses coming back down. I mean, they saw all this stuff, yet they kept turning away.
Mm-hmm.
With idols, but I've also heard that they were still new from being slaves. And some,
You would
this
think that
whole,
would be a big deal.
well, yeah, because, they spent more time as slaves and they're just entering this thing of being Israelites that would not go back to something. I'm not quite sure about this. I've had more experience being a slave and then coming out of that, because they worshipped idols too when they were slaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians. So I don't know. I
They
just
did
find
not,
that.
they didn't know how to deal with the freedom, possibly.
Yeah.
That's it, Michael.
Right. Okay.
You want to expand if you think about it, if you think about that, they had to develop a sense of responsibility that came along with that freedom.
Well, that's what Moses was attempting to do, I think. They went from a, a a king who enslaved them to Moses, which freed them.
Mm-hmm.
And this could have brought some confusion to the people after so many hundreds of years under slavery that they were just didn't know how to deal with it, really. What's somewhat confused about it, let's put it that way.
Good point. So yes, all these hands going up at once.
Let Kent go. And then
Okay, thank you.
Not that it'd be the most interesting comment.
Why not?
Look, here's the thing. There's two kind of issues in this Torah portion that we're studying, and one is the idol worship, and then you have the sexual promiscuity. Now, not being a Torah scholar, I do not know that, but I can guess how historically or in the Torah, um, uh, premarital sex is viewed, and is probably not held in high regard. And that's conjecture on my part because I don't know. But one thing that I am pretty confident in knowing is that um, if in fact that um, sexual relations were thought or expected to be in a more of a familial type of relationship, or husband wife, um, that having sexual intercourse or promiscuity, um, it is, at least in today's society, it can be an addiction. And, my guess is that it's an addiction that, it's like other things. It brings a personal satisfaction and the like. And if widespread, then you have, the people like falling off the Israelite wagon because, hey, it reminds me of something that in American history. There was kind of a joke made at President Clinton's first impeachment hearing by Senator Dale Bumpers, who was kind of defending him in the Monica Lewinsky trial. And he led by saying, if somebody says it's not about the money, it's about the money. And then he went on to say, if somebody says it's not about the sex, it's about the sex. And, people laughed, and it kind of took out a lot of the stress of the impeachment hearing. But I think that that's a major play here. And I think that I also think it is possible that this couple, I don't necessarily think that the woman, what's her name, Cosby, was a prostitute. Rather, it was just part of their culture, if that's how the Midianites kind of behaved with sexual promiscuity. But I do think it is quite possible that literally they could have been both killed at the same time in the throes through the belly. And so that's what I want to say about it's an addiction. It was pervasive, and it didn't stand well for the future. And Pincus was a zealot. And I do not think that he, having read what we read today, he held himself to the same level as God, but rather he was an acolyte, and he was a passionate acolyte. And in our lifetime, contemporary, earlier, we've seen people that are acolytes that will do anything and everything to please whoever they ascribe as their leader or model. And in this case, he probably was there when Moses said to the Israel's officials, which may have included his father, each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to Baal Peor. So he was there. He got the commandment, said, do it. And he did it. And the woman happened to be there with him at the same time. Okay, thank you.
Good point. Yes, Rabbi.
Okay, three quick things. One, Donna, with your question and comment and insight about that this whole thing was to display was a display of the wrath and the zealotry. Um, you're pulling that on the English. The Hebrew doesn't have that kind of phrase. So that just to point doesn't mean that it's not a valid insight, but the Hebrew doesn't have it. Okay. Secondly, there is I just remembered it listening to the conversation, and I don't remember where it's from. I don't think it's a classical commentary. I think it's a much more contemporary interpretation that Cosby is actually, yes, she is a prostitute. Sorry, Kent. But yes, she's a prostitute. And she's also hired by Bilam.
Ah,
Okay.
I was
that's
going
a
to, I was
funny
going,
one.
okay,
Did you
that's an
see that
important,
somewhere, Marty? Because I don't
that's,
remember
no, no,
where.
it's okay.
Yeah, I don't remember
Because that's what leads
where
into
it
the
is,
next
but that.
paragraph. That's right.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, that she was hired to find some, real influential,
Yeah,
powerful,
Right.
Israelite of renown, and and go a whoring with him in front of everybody to
right.
demonstrate what Bilam was originally talking about. Anyway,
Because
um,
if you remember the story, Balaam goes away, and the way it ends, we think he just walks away,
uh-huh, right.
from and
But he's still under
but
contract to
he's
Balak.
he's thinking he's thinking, all right, what do I have to do now?
Right. Right.
So I can understand that.
Yeah. And then the
That's
third thing, and this is only again an open-ended question. I don't know if there are some of the rabbis make a big deal of it, but that why, and we don't see it. We just see it as it's not even the change of chapters. Okay, but
mhm,
the pause in the middle between the previous Torah portion. Okay. And then there's this pause, and then it goes into what the repercussions are as we get into the Torah portion that's called Pinchas.
right.
The rest of it was from the Torah portion that was Balak and Chukat that are usually read
That's
read
right.
together. So again, some of the commentators make a big deal about it, but it obviously was a specific decision that the scholars made to pause the reading. Okay, we're going to stop here. You have to wait till next week.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that you can think about it.
It's the perils of Pauline, that's all.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, but
Uh,
yes, there are other locations too, where those little breaks become very important because it makes you think. A similar break occurs with Reuben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and there's and it doesn't come to light as to what's really going on until at the death of Jacob, and he's making his prophecy for his blessing for all his sons, and and it becomes a very
Yeah. But
important.
this one, one of the statements is that they're trying to point out that, and I forget who asked about it, but that Pinchas should have thought about it. Rather than just acting impulsively, he should, just like we're waiting, drawing the pause here, pushing the hold button, or whatever.
Mhm.
He should have waited. He should have waited also. That's why we
But then they
disagree.
would have considered it as murder if he had waited.
Yeah.
right.
So it becomes, it becomes a fascinating story in and of itself. Yes, Rabbi Miri, you wanted to
Well,
answer.
yeah, I want to comment about the comment of Ken. In the Torah, and I'm not talking about today, not even in the Talmud, the issue of being married, and it's completely a different type of connection between people.
Right.
The word in Hebrew, Baal, has, today it means owner, like Baal Bustes. But Baal is having the way of having sex. In any case, the problem is with women that belong to someone. And this is what it says in the Ten Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, they said, you shall not covet the woman that belongs to a person. It's not any woman. And there is this a test that they have to do with women, which is a horrible thing. It's like whatever. But you need to understand that the connection is different. They talk about if the woman belongs to someone, if she's a slave that belongs to someone, not to have sex with animals, not to have sex with your daughter or your cousin, and so forth. So it's not like today that we'll say, this guy is so addicted that he's going to have sex. Whoever passes about, and it is an addiction. We know that it is an addiction, but it's a different framework about the issue of being married, not being married. It's about ownership,
Ownership.
I would
Yes.
say. Yes.
All right, that makes good sense.
Good
But
way
I
of putting
still, I still like some clarification. I've read and reread that our sections, what we've gone over, and I don't see where it's definitive that this woman was a prostitute,
No,
Cosby.
no, it doesn't say
No,
that.
it doesn't.
No, it says
I
that
thought
she
Rabbi
was the
Norm, I thought you said
daughter.
yes, she was a prostitute or a whore or
No,
something.
one interpretation is it,
One
one commentary,
interpretation, these
Oh.
different
one way of
interpretations.
telling,
And
one
there's
way
a
of,
reason,
right.
there's a reason why we're not there yet where that interpretation would come from.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you if Kent, I'm going to ask
Sure.
you to read verses 16 through all the way through the end of 18.
Okay. All right. And
And this will
before I
answer a lot
begin,
of questions.
and I'm glad to do it, but I just want to plant a seed that somebody can help me with after. And that is a Midianite the same as a Moabite? Just don't have to answer now
Different
because,
tribes.
The neighbors.
but then because they're neighbors, but we just had a little discussion about Balaam, that this is kind of like this portion is a segue, but it's about the Midianites, and I thought he was Moabite. At any rate, that's a little confusion on my part. But let me get to reading this section.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's
Okay, here we
another
go.
lengthy discussion, which we may have to do next week.
Right. And I ask only
No,
because
it's
I don't know.
important. It's a very
Okay.
important detail.
Very good. Line 16, you
All the way
asked
through
her?
the end of 18.
Got it. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, assail the Midianites and defeat them, for they assailed you by the trickery they practiced against you, because of the affair of Peor, and because of the affair of their kinswoman Cosbi, daughter of the Midianite chieftain, who was killed at the time of the plague on account of Peor.
Okay. So because of the word trickery, we you can that implies that the act could have been whoring. Okay? That's all I'm going to say at this point, but we can think more about this. We can come back to it, finish up on this, and then move on from there. We can finish, have further discussion on this, these, because it's 12 o'clock.
Wow.
I'll just jump in to say, there were times in our history when the North and South were together, and there are times when Midian and Moab were separate, and there were times when they were confederated.
That's right. Good choice of words.
Okay.
Very good.
So, from the standpoint of things, next week, tune in next week for the next chapter in the Paralites, the perils of the Israelites.
Of
Okay,
us,
well,
of us, our parents, guys. It's our parents. It's not
But
about
it's
them. It's about us. We
There you
were
go.
in Mount Sinai. We are just them.
That's right. Okay, listen, thank you all. And I will be on a plane next Shabbat, and I'm very sorry. Somebody take good notes for me. And
Me
I'll
too. I'll
have
be
to
in a
miss the
plane
session.
Safe
too.
trip,
Maybe
Ken.
we're flying together.
All right. But
I
thank you,
think,
everybody.
okay,
Marty,
have a
particularly.
great week.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.